Olympic City and the home of Pikes Peak. This is the Automotive ADHD Show with Matt West.
And here we are, rocking it on the Automotive ADHD Show, heard around the world as a podcast here in Southern Colorado on the radio. Matt West here, hanging out with you, talking cars, and I have a loaded show for you today. We're going to talk about how speed cameras backfire on officials right here in Colorado. Also, how a EV explodes just up the road, still here in Colorado. 2 Colorado stories for one there. And this EV explosion, well, we're going to talk about exactly how this will spell the downfall of the universe itself. Yeah, it's that big. It's that big. Trust me. You're going to have to stick around and find out why. Also, VW miserably fails at April Fool's jokes by teasing people with something they actually want and then saying, oh, sorry, April Fools, and, well, everyone's mad now, and I don't blame them. So we're going to also talk about some other automotive April Fool's jokes that happened, and we're going to get into all of that. Now, I do want to thank the podcast listeners for hanging tight. The podcast has been on a brief hiatus throughout the month of March. Now, granted, if you've been listening on the radio, nothing changed. I've been doing some radio exclusives on the air. So that being said, welcome back to the podcast. We're rolling ahead, full steam ahead, full power. So now before we start things, you might be familiar with OBD1 Kenobi. He is a dear friend of the show, and I have some news about OBD1 Kenobi. And you're probably thinking, uh-oh, it's something bad. His Subaru exploded and took him with it. But no, unfortunately, it wasn't as exciting as that. But it's, well, maybe it's, I shouldn't say that. It's actually more exciting because I want to give him a heartfelt congratulations. Longtime listeners of this show know that he is a mainstay of the program. He's been on the show more times than I can count. He's a Volvo technician by trade who likes to wrench on Subarus in the night. And he just had a son. He is a new father. His son was born over Easter, and I'm sure that he has named his son something normal, something fitting, obviously. But if we're talking about his son's name, I just want him to know, as he listens to this, that he really has no say in the matter. And in fact, I, as the host of this show, have long since decided on his son's name, even before he actually knew he was having a son. That's how far back this goes. Now, what is his son's name? Well, considering that Brian's name is really OBD1 Kenobi, then his son, naturally, OBD2 Kenobi. Come on, does that even need to be asked? I mean, this is a simple logical progression. I mean, we went from OBD1 to OBD2. That's how it happened. OBD1 Kenobi to OBD2 Kenobi. So that's just how it is. Now, that being said, it may be a while before he can join me on the show again since he's, busy doing dad things, dadding, you could say, which is a shame because that EV I mentioned that exploded in Boulder, and we're going to talk about later on the show, was actually a Volvo. And Brian, OBD1 Kenobi, is uniquely qualified to talk about that because he works on those professionally. So if anyone could actually break down the way the hybrid electrical system works on these newer Volvos, it would be him, since it's his job to fix them when things go wrong. Now, clearly, he didn't work on the one that caught fire. Just throwing that out there. But anyway, I think it's really inconsiderate of him, obviously having a newborn son at this specific moment when I needed him for the show. That's terribly inconsiderate. So we're going to have a word with the mother, by the way, about this regrettable timing, unfortunately. So nothing we can do about it now, though. So anyway, congratulations to Brian for his newborn son. So I got to talk a little bit about this before we get into anything else. So, if you're like me, you typically enjoy a cup of coffee in the morning, in the late morning, in the afternoon, as well as the mid-afternoon, and then the late afternoon, and then the evening, and then now. That's typically how it goes. But that being said, if you are a big fan of coffee, and many of us are, it turns out coffee could be powering our cars in the future. And this is interesting. This comes by way of a study out of Japan. And scientists in Japan have figured out a way specifically to enhance the performance of hydrogen fuel cells using caffeine. I'm not even joking. The same way you get a little bit of a pick-me-up in the morning, right, from your coffee, is the same thing that's going to power your hydrogen car that doesn't exist yet. But let's not focus on the little details there. But that being said, what they found is that specifically in the reaction in a hydrogen fuel cell, and I'm no chemist. I sit here and I talk on the radio, and I'm definitely not qualified to talk about chemistry, but platinum is one of the key items that's used in a hydrogen fuel cell. And we can break this down real quick. If you're unfamiliar with hydrogen fuel cars, right, we're not talking about cars that burn hydrogen, not hydrogen combustion. We're talking about hydrogen fuel cell, where it uses hydrogen to create electricity. And then that electricity goes into a battery pack. And then from the battery pack, it goes into an electric motor. And so that's what we're talking about. And essentially, that's the process that happens. Fancy, complicated thing happens in the hydrogen fuel cell, obviously using hydrogen as the fuel there. It has a separate hydrogen tank, which feeds hydrogen to the fuel cell. Magic, witchcraft, dark magic, whatever you want to call it, happens inside that fuel cell. And then electricity goes into the battery pack. And so what these researchers in Japan have come up with, which is using coffee of all things. In Japan, they're known for liking things like canned coffee, among other things in Japan. But that being said, what they figured out is that they could use a very small amount of caffeine and put it on basically the surface of the platinum, again, one of the metals that is in the reaction process, and it boosted the it boosted the reaction process, they said, 11 times. So we're not even talking about a small percentage. No, they said it was 11 times. And that is interesting when you think about it. Now, does that mean 11 times the hydrogen or the electricity output? No, but 11 times the reaction happening in this part of the process doesn't quite equate to 11 times the actual power output. We're not quite there yet. But that being said, any little bit they can do to actually to improve the efficiency of this, especially when you can do it with something as cheap and available as caffeine. Caffeine is in all sorts of things, obviously. And I mean, I don't know if the researchers were just putting, pure caffeine in there. They said it was a small amount, or if, they just took their cup of coffee that was sitting there on the lab table and said, all right, we'll pour a little bit of that down there. But that being said, you probably shouldn't pour coffee in your fuel tank right now, not unless you've got a hydrogen fuel cell car. And I'm also not quite sure how you'd actually get it into the fuel cell. But let's not worry about the small details. But that does bring me on another tangent, which is, why don't we have more hydrogen cars? It's an interesting conundrum to me because, namely, we've got electric cars, which is already half of the way there, right? A hydrogen electric car, like I said, uses that hydrogen fuel cell to create electricity, to fuel a battery pack, to move an electric motor. And the idea being that you could essentially have an electric car that you could fill up instantly. So you get all of the instant torque of an electric vehicle, the things that electric vehicle nuts like to talk about and say, oh, it's so much better, right? You get those benefits, but you also get the benefit of a gas car, right? And you just fill it up right away. Boom, done. Easy, let's go. And I mean, there's a few. Toyota's been working on the Toyota Mirai, which is their hydrogen car. BMW's got one. I mean, we've seen manufacturers do it, but we haven't seen it come to the market. So it's one of those things we might talk about more in depth on a later show, because there are some things, I think, perhaps some political things influencing that. So we'll get into all of that and more. But after the break, don't go anywhere. We're talking about how speed cameras might have backfired on a town here in Colorado. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Automotive ADHD, and it's right here.
And now for how things work with an engineer.
Rotary engines. Regret.
And that was how things work with an engineer. More of how things work can be found at facebook.com/automotive ADHD.
are, hanging out, rocking it on the Automotive ADHD show. Matt West here, talking cars, and those car sounds were from the vault, from Jacob, his 5-cylinder Volkswagen Rabbit. We're going to talk about Volkswagens later. Now, Jacob, I had the opportunity to meet him and actually see his Rabbit in person, totally randomly. It was on I listed a racing seat for sale on Facebook Marketplace, and he messaged me and said he would buy it. He's local to the Springs area, runs in the Rallycross group out here, especially out at Pikes Peak International Raceway. So shout out to him. Very cool Rabbit, by the way. Sounds awesome. Now, you can send your car sounds into the show. If you listen to the show regularly, you know how this works. Send those car sounds into the show. I play them on the show, and you also have a chance to win some free stuff, including the Automotive ADHD key tag. Mine's getting a little greasy. If you look at my keychain here, this thing's starting to get... It's getting dirty, but you know what? That means it's well loved. It's well used. Now, that said, if you want one that's already greasy, then that's extra. By the way, I got to charge extra for that. I gotta do what I can there. So you'll get a nice fresh one. We'll put it that way. Those are the free ones. You pay extra for the grease. So anyway, and again, that where you can send those in is facebook.com/automotive ADHD. Now, we're going to talk about speed cameras and how the city of Aurora is, well, they're having some issues with them. Mostly the fact is that they're losing money. So we're going to get to that. But before we do, I got to touch on this. This, I promise you, is not an April Fool's joke. This actually came out a little over a month ago. So it couldn't have been an April Fool's joke. It wasn't even April. Crocs. Yes, the foam rubber shoe things. Yes, they have. Why am I talking about Crocs on a car show? Well, they have done an official collaboration with NASCAR. NASCAR Crocs, or NAS Crocs, as one might say. And you know what? I've never been a fan of Crocs. Yeah, I've had them. They're not the sort of thing I feel all that comfortable wearing in public. Let me put it that way. I feel like if you have them, you wear them at home, right? But no, these Crocs are cool. They've got all sorts of NASCAR logos on them. They've got even a little spoiler, a little wing on the back. You know what? I might have to start wearing Crocs. These are acceptable, in my opinion. And if you are watching on the video of this show, you can see what those look like right there. Look at those. Aren't they beautiful? Beautiful doesn't really is not enough of a word to describe my emotions I feel for these Crocs. That being said, I mean, if you're not watching on video and you're listening on the radio, you're just going to have to go to the video. YouTube. Look up Automotive ADHD Podcast. Rumble. We're on Rumble as well. You can find it on the social media too, facebook.com/automotive ADHD. We're doing Instagram and TikTok now too. So find it in all of the places where find things, and I guess my stuff is found, so you can check that out. But NAS Crocs, and now granted, I don't know what they're charging for these. Oh, actually, hold on, I'm pulling up the website. Never mind, I don't want them. No, they're fine. They're if you were wondering, $70 for some foam shoes. $70. They do say NASCAR though. They do say NASCAR on them. So if you are a NASCAR fanatic and you find yourself needing to go to some NASCAR events wearing some NAS Crocs, this is, well, then quite frankly, this is for you. That's exactly what it is. This is just for you. And that is not an April Fool's joke. And we're going to get to some April Fool's jokes here in a little bit. But now, that being said, if your NAS Crocs are the source of you driving faster, maybe they encourage you, maybe they whisper in your ear and tell you to hit that skinny pedal a little more, like a NASCAR driver, right? And you might be encountering speed cameras on the roads when that happens, right? So you got to be careful not to wear your NAS Crocs when you're driving past speed cameras and things like that. And I think universally, anywhere, anybody on the planet, any country on any continent, it doesn't matter where, universally hates speed cameras. They are the bane of mankind's existence. And the city of Aurora, which is just north of me here in Colorado Springs, kind of out, just by Denver, that area. they have implemented an interesting photo radar van system. So they're not quite speed cameras mounted on poles. They're speed cameras mounted on vans. They say these are special vans. And by the way, hat tip Max Levy from the Sentinel, Colorado, for this report. But what I find interesting about this is not that they have these things. They've had these things for a little while. Everyone was groaning when they said they were going to do these. But the problem is it's not paying. It's not paying the bills. In fact, it's actually losing the city of Aurora money. Council member Danielle Jurinsky said during a meeting that we're going nowhere with it. This thing seems to be about as useful as a chicken wire raft to me, the council member says. And so now, if you are listening on the podcast, you're maybe not in Colorado. You're like, why does this matter? Well, the thing is, this company that actually provides these speed cameras that governments, local municipalities contract with, probably is the company making and doing these things wherever you are. So, in all fairness, and this is a good representation of pretty much anywhere. I don't think Aurora, Colorado is necessarily different than, somewhere in Alabama, somewhere in Connecticut. It doesn't, at least in terms of traffic and things like that. It's not going to be that different. And that being said, the program is reportedly now $352,861.06 in the hole. They are hurting for money by that much. That's how much it's cost them. And what's crazy is the vans that these speed cameras are on cost $83,400 per month. Not only that, you think, okay, it's a van with the speed camera. You park it, you let it do its thing. No, don't get ahead of yourself there. These vans have to be manned. There has to be a person in them. Why? Who knows? The company says they have to be that way, which fully staffing the vans costs the taxpayer $35,000 a month, which is mind-blowing. And who is sitting in this van getting paid $35,000 a month? I want to go sit in a van and get paid $35,000 a month. But that being said, I've done some digging into this. And recently, a member of the Aurora Police Department reported that the city was on track to lose even more on the program. They're saying $535,000 before the end of the month. And it's just, that is so much money to spend on. By the way, I want to have you, if you're watching on the video, take a look at what this speed camera looks like. They're saying these are speed camera vans, right? Well, it's not so much a van, here we go on the video, as it's a device in the back of a car. And that's it. It's just pointing out the back window of an SUV. It's not even like mounted to the van. It's just on a tripod sitting on the rear floor of an SUV, pointing out the back window of it. It's not even like a special, super cool looking van with cameras and all sorts of things on it. It's not even that. And what's even more interesting, in my opinion, is the fact that these cameras, the fact that as far as tickets go, there have been 7,012 violations, they say, and 2,590 violations actually resulted in tickets getting mailed. And then a further 241 violations were being processed, with 4,181 violations being thrown out. So, okay, that's a bunch there, right? 7,000 violations, essentially. 4,000 of those were thrown out for whatever reason, because they couldn't prove it in the picture that the driver was speeding. And that's one of the problems with speed cameras. There's no police officer there to actually write you the ticket, to see you doing something. I've even heard of people I know who weren't driving their car, and somebody, like, for example, with a red light camera ticket, same idea. It's just a speed camera except for red lights. And they weren't even driving the car. A friend was driving the car. Friend gets the ticket, and they still got to go. The owner of the vehicle still has to take time out of their day to go to court to contest it and say, hey, you can see the guy in the picture? That's not me. I wasn't driving the vehicle. And so, but the fact is, 4,000 out of 7,000-ish violations were thrown out. Now, I want to play a quick clip here for you with the speed cameras. This is from the manufacturer of the speed cameras, which is a company called Conduent, not Conduent, Conduent, okay? They make speed cameras, but if you're watching on the video, give this a look, and if you're listening on audio, you can hear what I'm talking about as well.
There's a traffic violation about to happen, an accident likely to occur. Automated enforcement solutions from Conduit Transportation help make sure they don't, while accelerating your drive toward Vision Zero. Using photo and video camera technology, our scalable solutions are proven to reduce speeding in work and school zones, prevent HOT, HOV, and bus lane violations, keep intersections free and drivers focused in ways that are automatic, cost-effective, accurate, and indisputable.
Okay. Anyway, enough of that, whatever that was. Now, that is just, in my eyes, a bunch of corporate gobbledygook, corporatese speak, right? Where they have scalable solutions and this and that. And then finally, the end of that, they say indisputable, which, let me remind you, what was the number? Here, I'll pull up the Sentinel report here. Yeah, 4,000 were disputed and thrown out. I don't know. Look, if you've got speed cameras in your county, country, even state, wherever you are, might be time to have a word with your representatives and say, hey, these aren't working. Why are you spending money on these? So, hey, anyway, don't go anywhere. We're talking more cars right here after the break on Automotive ADHD.
At the Speed Council, getting things done fast is our priority. We do everything fast, from driving, working, sleeping, and eating.
Someone help, he's choking!
This is Tim.
Hello.
And by the time this ad is over, he'll have bicycled across the earth 69 times. Nice. Even if our name sounds unfamiliar, you know our work. F1? Pfft, child's play. The world's first supersonic jet? Yep, that was us. Apollo 11? Also us. The fastest animal in the sea? Hell, we even wrote the Wikipedia article. Fast. And we're so dedicated to speed that we've genetically engineered the world's first hyperspeed speed machine.
With this scientific breakthrough, you can interact with and download your favorite automotive podcast a whole day early. How's that for fast? Learn more at facebook.com/automotive ADHD.
This message approved by the Speed Council and the Church of Fast Things.
Check out those car sounds. Ryan is Ford Falcon, working on that restoration project. Chirping some tires at idle as well. Really fun stuff there. I love playing your car sounds, by the way. So if you have those car sounds and you want to share them and you want them in front of the world, well, you know what to do. Send them in. Facebook.com/Automotive ADHD and have your car sounds featured here on the show. And, of course, show them to all the fine folks on the Facebook page, too. There is a pinned post at the top of the page, and then you just comment on that post with your car sounds. So, now I have to discuss a couple of things here. We've come in past April Fool's Day now, and, April Fool's Day is a day that manufacturers, I feel, of cars and other companies in general, have an opportunity to do something genuinely cool and engaging and exciting. And, well, unfortunately for Volkswagen, who has had a bad history with April Fool's jokes, but Volkswagen has attempted humor. This is the Germans, bear in mind. Attempting something that sort of looks like humor. I'm not sure if they actually know what it is or if they're just kind of doing it and hoping it sticks. But that being said, they teased the Harley Quinn Volkswagen return. The return of the Harley Quinn, which, if you don't know what the Harley Quinn edition of any Volkswagen is, it's interesting. So if you are watching on video right now, you can see what I'm talking about. So the Harley Quinn edition is essentially, it dates back quite a ways. It dates back a couple of decades, actually. But the idea is each color, each panel on the car is different, and it's a different color, I should say. So you got this weird hodgepodge of a green fender, a red door, another yellow door, a blue quarter panel, a yellow hood. You got this stuff, and it's weird because you might say, okay, it's a car built of mismatched colors, and especially if you're a diehard muscle car guy, if the Euro stuff isn't your realm, you might not be familiar with this. And that's okay, because this never made it to the United States. At least it was never meant to make it to the United States. And, of course, Volkswagen, they should have known. Like all good things, if you prevent us from having it here in the United States, we just want it that much more. The Japanese have learned this. Euro manufacturers, I think they've kind of missed out on this. But that being said, The Harley Quinn, to give you some context, some history, goes back all the way to the 1960s, where it came from a 1964 Beetle advertisement where the Beetle had multiple colors, multiple panels, which was advertising easy interchangeability of parts. Right. And that was for that. And then they brought it back in 1995. Volkswagen in Europe decided to have the Polo City car and celebrate the launch of it. And they gave it a color scheme like this of all these different colors to, celebrate this launch. And again, these are really interesting, sort of pastel colors. And it's developed a cult following, so much so. I mean, the original Harley Quinn cars were only destined, there was only supposed to be 1,000 of them in 1995. Now, there was higher demand. Volkswagen made more of them. They made about 3,000 of them, and only 264 for the States. Now, of course, like any good thing, too, it was not popular when it came out. These cars didn't sell well. Dealers had such a hard time selling these that some dealers, actually swapped body panels around on these things so they'd all be the same color. Okay, take the green hood from this one and put it over here and just Lego these cars together. Again, showing how interchangeable the parts are, albeit, but Lego them together so you have one solid color car. So some of these special edition cars met their fate that way by dealers just undoing all of the coolness of it, right? And again, it's an acquired taste. This isn't, if this isn't your thing, that's cool, right? But that being said, for April Fool's Day, Volkswagen made a mistake. They did. They said, and they teased it up on social media, saying color is coming back. And they had all these flashy, poppy colors in these social media posts. And then they showed a picture of a modern version of the Harley Quinn on there again. And again, you can take a look at that on the video there, the modern one versus the old one. And this is just, you know what? I think this was rude of Volkswagen because they said, okay, we're going to give you this thing that you've really wanted, right? And then they go, just kidding, April Fools, because people are clamoring over these cars. Fans of Volkswagen love this sort of thing. And that's the problem. You can't just dangle this in front of people and say, oh, yeah, here's this thing you really want. And then, oh, never mind, it was an April Fool's joke. And here's the thing. With Volkswagen, April Fools has been... I almost think they should stop doing April Fools because back in 2021, they also attempted this thing known as humor, where they changed their name to, instead of Volkswagen, as the Germans might say, to Volkswagen, V-O-L-T-S, like electrical volts. And this was to promote, their electric car lineup that they've got coming. And it's playing on the fact that Americans, we pronounce it Volkswagen. We mispronounce things because as Americans, we're entitled to do that. But they were kind of playing on that. No one got the joke. No one thought it was funny. They said they changed their entire brand name, and official publications even believed them and ran with that. And then this ultimately, they said, oh, haha, it's just a joke. Oh, you silly Americans, right? Well, it actually led to a SEC investigation to determine if the name change to Volkswagen as an April Fool's joke, to determine if that actually broke the law, because this affected their stocks and everything. I mean, this caused problems, not to mention, Volkswagen already has issues with diesel and things. They've got a storied history with that. You may be familiar with that. So I don't know. Should the Germans just stop doing humor? It would probably be better for all of us. Or if they could just say, okay, that was a funny joke. we're so sorry. Let's make a couple of real ones and sell them as limited editions. And I'm sure people are going to line up out the door to buy them. That's a great way to get out of it, right? And actually make some factory Harley Quinn cars. And I mean, come on, because Volkswagen doesn't have anything interesting anyway. They don't. I'm sorry. They don't. Their current lineup in 2024, there is nothing interesting whatsoever. At least giving us cool colors on an otherwise boring car would be interesting, in my opinion. I mean, that speaks to a whole nother point I have too, which is, why don't we have cool colored cars? Why? We don't. You go out on the road right now. If you're driving on I-25 or wherever, and look at the color of cars you see. Gray, silver, slightly off gray, more gray. That one's white. That one's black. That's it. Gray, white, black. That is the color of cars right now. And again, various shades of gray. At least 50 of a certain vehicle. I don't know. No, that's an old joke now. But anyway, various shades of cars that are not interesting. Like, why don't we have bright reds? What happened to the plum crazy purples of the world? I mean, I know Mopar, of anything, Dodge has been keeping up with some interesting colors. They brought back some of their heritage colors. Again, thinking plum crazy purple as an example of that. You've also got other things. You've got grabber blue. You got a few manufacturers doing cool colors, but it is so limited. And there are so many opportunities for interesting cars. And I think we're missing out on that. And I think in a roundabout way, this Harley Quinn Volkswagen thing points to the fact people want some color in their lives. They want their cars to pop. They you don't have to spend a lot of money on a fancy, colorful car. Yeah, the supercars right now, of course, they're colorful, they're nice, but your average cars, the thing with the Harley Quinn, the old ones, was that this is an economy car, essentially, right? This is not a supercar. It's not a Ferrari. It's not a Lamborghini, okay? Ignoring the fact that Volkswagen owns Lamborghini, but let's ignore that. Cool economy cars with interesting color schemes. Let's get back to that. We need to see more of that. We need to have more people buying interesting colored cars because manufacturers make what they think you want to buy. So anyway, hey, don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about more bad automotive April Fool's jokes after the break. You are listening to Automotive ADHD. Don't go anywhere.
Colorado Springs' #1 car show by default. This is Automotive ADHD.
Well, I love it when you send your car sounds into the show. I'm playing some of my favorites from the past. That was Bailey's 17 Ford Focus. And remember, you can send those car sounds into my show. I like playing them. It brings me immense joy. And in fact, if anything, I would argue that I live vicariously through the car sounds that you send into the show. So Facebook.com/Automotive ADHD. That's the place to do it. And let me know when you send those in. While you're at it, let me know where you're sending them from, whether you're listening on the radio here in Colorado, or if you're catching the podcast or the video stream of it as well, anywhere in the world. So before the break, I was talking about automotive April Fool's Day things and how Volkswagen, or as they tried to say, Volkswagen, they did that as an April Fool's joke if you missed it. But that being said, I was looking at okay, we've got these automotive April Fool's jokes, and sometimes they don't land, and other times they do, and they're spectacular. And a good example of some other automotive April Fool's jokes that happened, and some of them were official and some of them weren't. There was a picture floating around on the internet of a current generation Subaru BRZ being marketed as the Subaru BRZ Wilderness Edition. What's that? It's all-wheel drive. It's got plastic cladding on the bottom side of it. It's lifted, and it's got a roof rack. And it looks cool. Just throwing that out there as well. And this is once again, and this came from Subaru of New England, by the way. So not Subaru corporate, but Anyway, it's a nicely done Photoshop of a lifted all-wheel drive BRZ. Problem being, people want a lifted all-wheel drive BRZ. They want that. The success and popularity of the Porsche 911 Dakar, which, by the way, is like the lifted 911 rally-inspired 911 with all-wheel drive. And I mean, cool off-road, otherwise sports cars are the neatest thing. You take a sports car and you put it off-road and you do some fun stuff with it, and that is so cool. And here we have it again. Yes, not Subaru corporate, but Subaru New England teasing us, saying, hey, look at this thing. And then, of course, they're like, oh, yeah, April Fools. April Fools. It's all April Fools, isn't it? But, April Fool's Day, I think, as a whole, can have some, like, if you're a company, now, there weren't that many auto companies this year doing April Fool's Day gags, except for Volkswagen. And, well, we see how that turned out. But that being said, I think companies are steering away from that. I think we're almost steering away from April Fool's jokes as a whole, not even in the automotive space. Yes, I know this is a car show, but talking about a little bit about you've got companies like Google maybe not having April Fool's jokes land when they did their mic drop April Fool's Day joke back in 2016, which then turned into a glitch and caused problems for everybody. Elon Musk, famously or infamously, you could say, in 2018, said Tesla was going bankrupt and then ended up immediately tanking the stock by like 7%. I think if you're a company, you got to play this the right way. And you got to do it tactfully, you got to do it tastefully, and you got to do it in things that aren't teasing your consumers with things that they really wish you would sell them. Great example, I think, of an April Fool's joke done right is Taco Bell. In 1996, they did an April Fool's joke where they basically said that they bought the Liberty Bell so that they could rename it the Taco Liberty Bell. And they said that they were going to do it to help with national debt. And this caused a little bit of a stir. You had government officials, scrambling to figure out if this really was the case, if it was real or not. Of course it wasn't real. It was on April Fool's Day. But that being said, Taco Bell said, yeah, it was a hoax, but we'll also throw $50,000 towards the preservation of the bell. And it was a win-win. And it turns out, by the way, that April Fool's joke, in terms of marketing, after the fact, was estimated to be worth $25 million in advertising and sales. And they donated $50,000, obviously, a small chunk of that, to make it kind of real and make people feel good about it. And it worked well. Now, have we seen this with cars? Have we? I'm tying this back to cars. I think, yes, we have, sort of seen this with cars. And this is where I have to talk a little bit about some automotive history. Enter one of the best car companies to ever exist. Truly the most reliable, most renowned, top tier. I can't continue that much longer, but AMC, American Motors, the now defunct AMC company. They haven't been around for a long time. We'll put it that way. But that being said, they made some historical cars. Obviously, when I say AMC, you're thinking of one of two vehicles. You're probably thinking of the Pacer, Wayne's World, obviously, that made that very popular. You're also maybe thinking of the Gremlin, or if you're really weird, you might think of the AMC Hornet. I was a former AMC Hornet owner, and it was stolen, and then it was so bad the thieves didn't want it. I already read a eulogy for the car on this show, and you can't take it back after you've read the eulogy, right? Well, the thieves didn't want it, and I got the car back. I digress. Now, AMC did have some interesting history, of course, partnering up with the French, which that never works well, and then things started going downhill. But, AMC did, they were involved with Jeep for a really long time. They're the reason we get the venerable straight six and many older Jeep products, all going all the way through the TJs and the XJ. You got obviously the TJ, the Wranglers, and the XJs, the Cherokees. That straight six, you can't kill them. There's no way. Those engines will literally outlive the sun. They will outlive this planet, and they will keep running. And that being said, how this ties into April Fool's Day, though, is the Gremlin. Okay, the Gremlin. All right. Was announced, and many of the listeners, perhaps on the radio, maybe actually old enough to remember when the AMC Gremlin was announced. I'll be honest, I wasn't around when it was when it was announced. 1970, by the way, so few years ago, they celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Gremlin, and the Gremlin, however, was announced on April Fool's Day. And here's the genius in this, okay? The Gremlin became somewhat of a automotive icon, for better or for worse, but it was released on April Fool's Day. And that was, you got to think, either this was genius, because I'm not sure which is more of a joke, right? Debuting the car on April Fool's Day, completely unwittingly and unknowingly, or the fact that it was an April Fool's joke that they actually followed through with and made. Now, obviously, the car was being developed before April Fool's. It takes a long time to develop a car. The Gremlin is based roughly off of the Hornet chassis, or the Hornet is roughly based off of the Gremlin. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Who knows? Gremlin is just a short Hornet. A Hornet is just a long Gremlin. Now, if you want to get technical, the Hornet goes back to the Concorde, and that, not the jet, but the car, and that did technically come first. But when we're talking about the Gremlin, I mean, it was a car famous for a couple of things. For one, that it was initially designed on an air sickness bag. It's famous for that. Famous, infamous, take your pick. But also the fact that it was announced on April Fool's Day, because you do leave people wondering, is this an April Fool's joke? There's no way they're making this silly little thing. And then they do. And then, oh, wait, they're still running ads for it. It's April 2nd. What are they doing? and that's how you get, I think, you can leverage, if you're a company, you can leverage April Fools in your marketing, but you got to do it right. And I don't necessarily want to say AMC did it right. They released a hilarious car on a hilarious day. But now, anyway, hey, that's all the time I got today. But don't miss a minute of this show. And remember to interact with it. Facebook.com/AutomotiveADHD. Remember, you can catch it on the radio. You can also find it as a podcast wherever fine shows. And hey, this one are downloaded. And remember to give the show a rating on Spotify if you listen to it there. Now, I will see you next week when we're talking more cars right here.